also many other schemes that don't really fall into this category. And just because it's a really fun topic to show pictures, I will show you some pictures. So one example is Pleistocene Park. Maybe you've heard about this in the high Arctic in Russia, all the way up there in the north, where there's vast expanses of coldness and permafrost. The permafrost is melting now. So some Russian scientists have come up with a brilliant idea, who knows if it will work, idea, how can the permafrost be saved? Well, it's thawing a lot, so the idea is to reintroduce the fauna, the animals that went extinct in the last ice age, and have them trample all the ground down. So this is what it should look like, and as you can see here, mammoths. So the idea includes recloning the mammoth. I told you, some ideas are maybe not the most feasible, but the most spoken about idea is this. The idea would be to mimic an artificial volcano. We know from historical data that if a volcano erupts and it emits sulfur dioxide mainly into the stratosphere, the Earth's temperatures will cool maybe for 1 or 2 years. So the idea would be to artificially reproduce that. Here's a balloon. The balloon won't work by launching thousands of aircraft into the stratosphere and having them inject particles. This is the most studied idea. It's very disconcerting, comes with a lot of risks, but some deem it most feasible for a rapid, effective cooling of the Earth. That has come with a lot of protest. So here is the main example of that. We've already seen this picture, I think, 2 days ago or yesterday. I think, if I remember correctly, this was actually taken at a protest against one of these geoengineering experiments in the north of Sweden, where they wanted to launch a balloon without release of particles, but just to see if the equipment worked on Sami lands without asking for permission. This was blown down by massive protests, both Greta Thunberg, but also very prominently the Sami community. So a lot of issues come up around this, and Anna-Marie in her talk also mentioned some scholars like Paul White who are writing about the indigenous responses to geoengineering, that very often it's linked to neocolonialism or green colonialism, where often on indigenous lands these ideas are proposed to be placed and executed. And then maybe to connect the Arctic and Third Pole, because after all we're in the interpolar conference, one very good example is this. So you see here the powder, white powder. These are hollow glass microspheres, kind of sand beads that are supposedly able to increase the albedo of everything that's spread upon. So albedo is the amount of reflectivity of surface area. And by spreading that on ice, one team hopes to save sea ice, while another hopes to spread it on mountain glaciers to also save those areas. So higher albedo means less melting of ice, more stability. That's the idea in any case. In the Arctic, it's been highly controversial. The Inuit community mainly has been protesting against one of its iterations. And this is a very new idea, the Bright Ice Initiative. They want to do experiments, very small scale, in the Chota-Shikli Glacier, north of Manali in India. They first said it would be 2023, now it's 2024, so I'm not sure if it will happen and when it will happen, but it's in collaboration also with experts from IIT Indore, I think, or yes, at least the university in Indore. So definitely these connections in terms of geoengineering, these controversial technologies, all across the cryosphere, these are now at least proposed, given the dire state of the cryosphere. Now, I'm not here to give my opinion or give any final solutions on whether we should do this or not, but just to raise questions. I'm an interdisciplinary scientist, but mainly working on social issues, science and technology studies. So the issues I will be dealing with, mostly my research and I'm dealing with, are issues of governance and ethics. So who should have a say in this? Should also, for example, small island communities in the Pacific say something, all right, now we are going underneath the waves very soon. Should we have glacier stability projects? Should we have a say in that? Or should it just be the local communities? How to govern such a thing? what are the acceptable risks? So I showed you the picture of the artificial volcano. Comes with huge risks because if you one day decide to stop, then suddenly the temperature will rise up because you haven't solved the problem. You've just placed an artificial shield around the Earth. So yesterday also we had in this room, the first day, also very good sessions on indigenous rights, and of course many of these issues, as the Sami example of the protest also showed, can be seen as a kind of green colonialism, again on the lands of indigenous communities. Most of these projects are proposed. How to deal with that? Who bears responsibilities for the side effects? Yesterday we had a talk about transboundary harm, for example. What if here in Nepal such a project would come to be and it would pollute the rivers of India? Who would deal with those kind of things? Or if you think about a global scale, who bears responsibilities for these issues? Who pays for this? Who regulates? I can go on and on. There's a lot of issues with these topics, but at the same time, many people say, we're already in such a bad state. We have to come up with some kind of solutions, because if we just aim for the reduction of greenhouse gases, then if we just aim for the reduction of greenhouse gases, we won't make it. And even if we would stop emitting at this point in time, there are areas, for example, around Svalbard that have heated 6 times more than the global average. There was a report I read about this morning that Antarctica, even though we thought it was relatively immune for climate change, warmed twice the speed of the global average. So all these processes are already underway, with potentially massive sea level rise increase, water scarcity. You have the permafrost issue, which could release tons and tons of greenhouse gases, making a runaway greenhouse gas effect potentially likely. So big issues. I don't have answers. I just come here to share this with you. It's a bit disconcerting. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, you can reach me here or speak with me later. Thanks.
Thank you. Perfect timing also. I think that was nice. So we have time for 1 or 2 very quick questions. Yeah, I can see Rajuji here, and anyone? Okay, 2. Let's see how it goes. If we have time. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. One thing which is pertaining to the Himalayas. If you want to mitigate the fast melting of glaciers, if you are there, the glaciers in the Himalaya melt normally between March and May months when the earth starts warming up. And this is exactly the time from Afghanistan up to Myanmar, the forests are burning. And they're all between 1500 meters to 3000 meters. That's where maximum black carbon gets into the air, and at that time fresh snow is there, and the black carbon settles, and that's where the melting takes faster. So if you want to invest in local mitigation, I think it's time that we start lobbying for mixed forests, first of all. Second, doing a very, very credible forest management which doesn't allow fires. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, I'm not advocating these kind of projects. It's just that some say that beyond those kind of measures, we would also be wise to at least do the research into these other kinds of alternatives that might, in a more fundamental way, cause a growth of, or a return, or a restoration, or maybe even a slowing down of the melt, those kind of glaciers. But again, I'm not advocating, and I'd like to say that is probably one of the best solutions for local Himalaya, Hindu Kush region glacier melt.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I have more of an observation and a comment than a question. After recapping all the presentations I have been hearing since the very first day, it's my personal, observation that why we are, saying again and again that glaciers were there before us. We humans, we have been talking about the concept of Ethnocene, but there is also a concept of Ethnocene, which means that it's high time to think about saving ourselves from the nature, from the glaciers, instead of thinking about saving glaciers. I mean, it could be rude to, most of you, or maybe like, but at the same time, coming in indigenous voice from a region where there are some 7,000 glaciers, I have personal observations, personal experiences. Most of us, like the researchers, we don't have that patience, to try to understand the nature, try to observe glaciers. Because when I talked about the potters, the people who have been meditating with glaciers, they spent more than 40 to 50 years understanding glaciers. Yeah, I mean, it's a general observation for all of the presenters. I might be wrong, but this is my personal observation. So for me, it's high time to think about saving ourselves from glaciers than to save them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. If I might quickly give a few words, maybe in terms of mountain glaciers, it's a bit more difficult because they're very difficult if we want to save, how to save them. But if we, for example, think about ice sheets, so the Greenland ice sheet, if it melts, which it did the last time the temperatures were around this high, that would mean 6 to 7 meters of sea level rise. Antarctica holds 60 meters of sea level rise. Now, with the mountain glaciers, I get that in a way we can maybe adapt, at least in the century away, but if sea levels rise 1 meter, and think about all the major cities in the world that are close to sea level, all the beaches you've ever been to will disappear. And maybe it will not be 1 meter this century, but maybe 2. There's large uncertainties within the science on that. So I do agree that we should also be modest. We shouldn't try to engineer our way out of this, but there may be some cause to at least that's what some researchers say, right? That there might be some cause to do the research to see if we can save ourselves from the worst excesses. There's one quote that's often given by advocates of geoengineering, and I find it very disturbing that maybe it would be good in relation to your quote to close with that then, and that we've become like gods in the Anthropocene, so we might as well be good at it. So maybe a very controversial remark.
Yeah,
close with.
I think it is.